Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and I am here with Kerry-Ann Powell. How are you, Kerry-Ann?
Hi, Angela. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. It's a wonderful day here in Atlanta. I'm always happy to be on a podcast.
It's a fantastic day here as well. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to chit chat.
Yes, absolutely. So I love your story. I love what you stand for. I think you have so much value to bring to our audience today. So I want to take a moment to introduce you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So Kerry-Ann is a global business strategist, speaker, and champion of small and medium-sized businesses. Kerry-Ann's varied experience of over 20 years as a Washington, D.C. attorney, lobbyist, and fundraiser positions her as an authority of what it takes to strategically succeed while confronting difficult obstacles. After raising $120 million, wow. $120 million to build the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, she launched her strategic business and consulting firm, Trafalgar Strategies. She and her team advise business owners from various industries and countries on creating the strategies, systems, and mindsets to thrive in business and in life. Over the years, Kerry-Ann's experience and speaking have been sought after by international brands, organizations, and institutions such as Working Women's Magazine, Dallas Leadership Foundation, CIEE, Association of Fundraising Professionals, mogul and philanthropist Russell Simmons, Rush Philanthropic Arts Foundation, and more. Gosh, that's a mouthful. Kerry-Ann is committed to spreading the gospel that running a small and medium-sized business is vital and important to our economies, yet it doesn't have to feel like trying to manage a chaotic tornado. And business owners can run their businesses smoothly and feel confident that they will thrive. Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly. So thank you.
It's
This is
the
exciting.
gospel, I'm telling you.
It really is. It really is. You know, as much as I love running my small business, I say, you know, small business is not for everybody. But it's a wonderful thing to do if you have the ability to do it, at least with something, you know, even if it's not your full-time job, you know, finding something that you can do on the side even is fulfilling.
I think so too. Absolutely.
All right. So let's dive into what took you to Washington, D.C. I mean, that's huge. Being a lobbyist, that's
Yeah, I know. I just always believed. So, when I was in college, I was a pre-med major. And so I thought I was going to be, a doctor. And then I realized that I couldn't pass physics. And so
I get it.
But I was still really eager to continue in the sciences. So I was thinking about doing neuroscience. And so when I was literally sitting with my mom filling out our applications for grad school, I realized I actually didn't want to do research because, at that time I had already done some 2 years of research with professors, and I've been in a lab in the psychology school's basement. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I wanted to do. My parents were like, so you're coming home because we're not paying for you to hang out in your college. So I'm like, yeah, so can I stay? And so I took about a year for me to get my footing, and I got this job working at the United Way in my town. And that was when I really began to get exposed to this sort of intersection between helping, right? So and also business, because it's the idea of, you can you need strategy, you need fundraising abilities, you need the capacity to be able to convince and persuade people.
Oh, yeah.
And so, this is me coming in as a young person, just excited, like, oh my gosh, look at all these professionals doing this amazing work. And there's an intersection with the work that they're doing is going to help all these different people in the end. And as I was doing that, I realized, wait a minute, there's a lot of need, because when you're growing up, you don't realize you're sheltered, right? So you don't realize how much need there really is. And, in our city, we had one of the largest domestic violence shelters
Really?
in the country at that time. And they, they had this whole school on site, the whole thing. And everyone used to like talk about how wonderful this domestic violence shelter is and how they're going to continue to add more, capacity for it. And all I could think about, well, why is there domestic violence?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. What's going on here? And so that's when I started, sort of really looking at how is it that I could start to help change the things that cause the problem, why we need this state-of-the-art domestic violence shelter. And as I was talking to different people and mentors, I realized that the law was the way I wanted to do it. So I went to law school.
Wow, good for you.
To go into public policy law and sort of, go into this. So that's what I did. And that's how I ended in Washington. And so I was there for a bit, did some public interest lobbying as an attorney, headed up a couple of programs, and it was very fulfilling and loved it. But then, I got word that they were building the Martin Luther King Memorial in the National Mall, and they were looking for a fundraiser to do corporate fundraising, which just so happened to have been what I, cut my teeth on, back in the day. So I said, you know what, I'll pause my career for, 2-3 years, do this whole thing with the memorial, and then I'll get back to the law and lobbying, but never did.
I understand.
But went through and did this wonderful thing, and that's how I got to Washington.
Wow, well, what an amazing thing to be part of too, is, that Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is there because of your efforts. And that is, I mean, life-changing, really. I mean, it
Truth be
totally.
told, I don't think there's anything else that I probably will do. I mean, of course, the future is ahead. But up to this point in my life, it truly was the most fulfilling aspect of my career, and definitely a part of my life. So yeah.
I mean, what a significant accomplishment. I mean, good for you. That's just so impressive. So you go to law school, and I love that you wanted to really kind of make a change, make a difference, because you're right. Getting to the root of the problem is really where you start solving things, right? Because
Angela, let's be honest.
It's so frustrating.
I mean, that's the real thing. I think we're smart, we're savvy. We come up with all these different ways to address a problem and to fix the sort of the symptoms of the problem. But in the end, I think for me, I'm really interested in how do we fix the root cause, because we can do a lot of different ways to patch a problem up, and we do a lot of great things. I mean, you have people that are doing amazing things in the world to fix the symptoms of problems.
Absolutely.
But I think, I guess for me, I'm more of a root cause kind of person. And that's one of the reasons why I love the business that I'm in, because, businesses come in and they're like, oh yeah, for some reason I can't scale, and they think it's because they don't have enough sales. But then you dig deeper and you realize the problem is, well, because the product sucks.
Right. Well, and I mean, we're in a culture where it's so much easier to fix the symptom than it is to figure out what the root cause is. And I mean, even our healthcare system, if you look at our healthcare system, we're in a society where, hey, I can either go to the doctor and figure out why I keep coughing, or why this, whatever is happening with me, or I can just run to the drugstore and take something to Band-Aid it until I can't take it anymore, and then I'll go figure out why.
Oh yeah.
And same thing with diets. I just had a nutritionist join me, and there's so much that goes on with us when it comes to our health, and most of it is our own diet. It's what we're putting into our bodies or depriving our bodies of that really makes all the difference.
You have just said wisdom right there.
Yeah.
And we're all guilty of it. I mean, I myself, the other day I was having all these headaches, and I was like, God, why am I having all these headaches? And you're popping an Advil here and a thing there, whatever. And then you just got to realize, oh, it's because my neck is like doing this weird thing when I'm working all day on the computer.
Yep. I'm on the computer. My eyes hurt. I'm dehydrated. Like, there's so many other things that we can make an adjustment and solve the symptom by also solving the root of the problem. So going into law to solve a problem with domestic violence is, I mean, it's genius. This is exactly, we need more of you. We need more are people like you out there, that see a problem as deeper. And I have no doubt that you take that same strategy into your business, into consulting with other businesses and saying, okay, I get it. Like you were saying, like maybe the revenue is off because the product isn't great. Maybe we should start looking at, where is the baseline of where does this start, and really going all the way down and digging deep.
I have what I call sort of these 8, true culprits of business chaos. And in the end, if you flip side that, it's really the 8 foundational things that need to be implemented, I believe, in a business, particularly as it relates to small and medium-sized companies, for them to really thrive. And so when a company comes to me and they're saying, hey, I've got this issue with cash flow, or have this issue with not scaling, or whatever the issue is, what I call those the symptoms of chaos, I then sort of really audit based on the 8 components that I really have found, and what my team has found to be the real true areas that we need to focus in on. And once you sort of do an audit and say, okay, well, here's really where things are not working on, this is it right here. Right. And then they're like, oh, really? I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Because, and I always say this, because fish really can't see water. And that's like, you can't see your own water when you're running your business and you're just trying to like meet payroll and, make sure that things are growing. You don't have the time to really sit back and look and see what really is the problem. So one of the things that we do is just really help people to kind of say, okay, here are some foundational things. Let's audit based on these things, and let's take a look and see where they are. And sometimes you might have, just like anything, Angela, you might say, well, this area here in the business is going quite well. This one's more medium, and this one is like fire. If we don't fix this,
right.
We need to go ahead and do this now.
Yeah. So can you share some of those 8 factors with us, just so that, we can kind of take a look at our own, businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the first fundamental thing is what I call sort of the big idea. Okay. And that encompasses a lot of things. One, believe it or not, one of the basic things in the big idea is the owner's life vision and life plan. So oftentimes, when you look at small and medium-sized companies, the owners are very much still involved in the business. So the question on the table is, what is your life plan? And then how does the business fit into that? Because maybe you created a business long time ago and you didn't really have a life plan. You just kind of thought, someone said, oh, you're good at this, and they hang a shingle out. And then you haven't really audited and said, does this business even fit into what it is that I want my life to be, or how I want, my life to be? And you don't change the life plan. The life plan comes from the innards. If you somehow feel like there's a mismatch between the vision of your business, meaning its purpose, and the current big, hairy, audacious goal you have in your business, then you need to shift that, not the life plan, because a life plan carries you, that's coming from your soul spaces. But some other things that fall into that basic sort of big idea component, that's like the first one, really is, how do you have a business vision? Meaning, what is the North Star for your business? I can't tell you, Angela, how many times, businesses have been just running and they just keep going and going, but they have no true goal or vision for the future. So the individuals, the team is running and doing their things on a day-to-day, and they have no concept of what they do on a day-to-day, where is that connected to? What is that moving them to? So I think it's really important to kind of say, this is what we do. So for instance, in our business, we have a goal that we want to reach in the next 10 to 15 years. Okay. And then we say, here's our purpose. Our purpose, we're in the business of helping businesses thrive. So it allows for us to know that when something pops up, some sparkly, object that comes around and says, hey, here's something really cool, maybe we should do this. We can come back to that purpose and say, does this help us help businesses thrive in the way that's going to get us to the big goal that we have for the next 10 to 15 years? It allows everyone to know, hey, every single thing we're doing in the business moves us towards that. That allows for some. So if you'll be surprised how many businesses don't even have a good goal and vision.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so that's some fundamental things in the basics. So then after, once you sort of have your sort of foundational things, and the second thing is around leadership.
Okay.
So I think, and I call it inspired leadership, and that is speaking to the business owner. I believe inspired leadership requires three things. You have the ability to lead yourself well, you're leading your team well, and you're leading the organization well. The organization is an entity outside of yourself.
Right. Right.
And then on the third side of the third step, the third of the 8, is really the other side of the coin of the least inspired leadership, which is the rock star team.
Yeah.
Is your team a good fit of people where you didn't build this team? Now, of course, we all know, Angela, when you're building an organization, you might sort of, have cousin Susie come in early days because she's good at social media, and then you have someone else, whatever.
Right.
But as you grow as an organization and begin to age, what is the organization chart? Where the roles fit in? And then do the people that you have in your organization, are they the best people, the best fit for the roles you have created? Now, sometimes what happens is that people, they kind of didn't really do an org chart at the very beginning, and now they're sort of here, and this is the organization you have, and these are the people you have.
Yeah.
I just sort of say pause a bit, ignore your current business, go relax for a moment and just sort of say, what does your business need now by way of a team? Ignoring who's there, ignoring what you have currently. Once you sort of create that, and then start looking at the people that you have on your team and say, okay, are these individuals, so the person that's doing all the different 5 tasks that are not related,
right.
are they, where would they fit best in the organization based on the org chart? Now, this can be scary for a lot of business owners because they're feeling like, I'm not going to let my team go, and it may not have to be like that. But in the end, the whole point is to have an org chart, have clear expectations as to the roles, making sure that people are in the best role based on their qualifications, their makeup, who they are, and then making sure that you're hiring really self-motivated people. Once you have that, then those two sides, inspired leadership and the rockstar team, those are the second and third elements. You're good to go.
Right.
The rest of the things, you're looking at creating strategy, creating standard operating procedures to execute the strategy. You have a strong execution plan for your strategy. And then you always have optimization and innovations woven in to your business in a way, not like, oh, we're going to decide to be kind of cool and innovative today.
Yeah. Right.
But it's in the process. And so you have all of those sorts of things, and you wrap it around with a good growth mindset. I think those elements put you in a good position to thrive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's so many things there that, really resonated with me because, when I first started my business, I was one of those who, I don't want to go into debt, also I couldn't get any money. I couldn't get any money from banks. I couldn't get any money from investors. I couldn't get any money. And so I had to bootstrap, which meant I was the recruiter and the salesperson and the operations person and the on-site manager and the employee. I was doing my own staffing. I was bussing tables and, bar backing and whatever it took. And I think, just being so scrappy in those early years and just doing everything, the hardest part has been peeling myself away from it because I know I'm the bottleneck. I know, I know right now that the business can't grow if I continue to hold on to things. And so, but it is hard that, putting that org chart together, this is where somebody like you, coming into an organization who can look at an organization as it is, right? Like there's no emotion there. There's no, PTSD. And so somebody like you can come into an organization and look at it as it is on paper, in action and say, here are your missing pieces and how can we make this better for you? Because as an entrepreneur, like you were saying, a fish can't see the water it's swimming in. You can't see it sometimes.
You really can't. You really can't, Angela. And what you just said, you're like, you realize you're the bottleneck. That is all kinds of self-awareness right there.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, so many business owners, they just don't even realize that they're the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to walk them through that. It's difficult, and that's what we do. But, when they finally realize it, it's like, oh, and I think a large part of it is one, it's, look, I built this from the bottom, that kind of thing. And I get it. I'm a small business owner myself. I also know a part of it too is this kind of sense of worth, this kind of, well, if I'm not necessary in this, then what role do I play?
Right.
And I always say, look, there are a lot of things you can outsource in a business as a business owner. But the things you cannot outsource are, one, your ability to be able to see the strategic vision of the organization and direct it towards that.
Right.
And if you're spending all the time working in your business, there's no way you can be directing the strategy of the business and moving it forward. You just can't have both. So you can decide and say, this is the organization that I'm going to have. This is the business that I'm going to have. And as it is, and we're just going to keep it moving the same way. Or you can say, I have a bigger vision for this business. And, I was talking about sort of the fundamental things, right? The big idea section, that first foundation. And one of the things that I often do too is ask people, well, what's your exit strategy?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, we don't have an exit strategy. So you're just building this thing and then what? So what's going to happen? What's the plan? I had a really dear aunt. She just last year, so she was an educator for a number of years. And when she retired, she decided to open a childcare, like a preschool, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, because she's a fabulous woman, and also because she is a very well trained educator, she got all these different, families just wanted to have their children go to her school.
Right.
So over the years, I want to say she had it for about maybe 10 years, maybe. That's what in my mind, that's what I'm remembering. And through that time, you have all these young families who they just stayed with her. So they just started when they were having their children, their babies, all the babies just went through that preschool.
Yeah.
And because they didn't want to leave. And so they became a community. And so she has all this goodwill. She has all of this number of people that are loyal to the school and loyal to the curriculum that she developed at the school. When it was time to close down, she didn't have an exit strategy. So she just closed it down. So no selling. And she had all this clientele. I mean, I'm not saying that she was going to sell it for $1 million, but she could have sold it for quite a bit because of, the facility, the materials, the
reputation,
the curriculum she developed, all of that sort of thing. But because she had built it in a way where it was reliant on her in such a way, it was not sellable, even if she thought she could sell it, because she didn't build it in a way that it could be sold.
Right.
And of course, some of your listeners may be business owners, they're like, well, I don't want to sell it. I want to pass it on to my kids. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you think you want to pass the business on to your kids, you have to build it in a way that doesn't require you in it.
Right.
And you also need to have some systems in place, processes in place, as well as insurance and all the other things that will allow for you to be able to retire and have a retirement fund coming out of the business and be able to sell it or give it to your family member, your kids. So if you're not thinking along, you kind of build something differently. If okay, here's the plan, here's the exit strategy coming out of it, versus if you're just building and saying, I just want it to grow, I just want to grow. Okay, that's great. and then what?
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. 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 Well, and honestly, the bigger the clients get, the more they're going to want to see what that extra exit strategy is. And a good example of that is when I was a really tiny little business and we were working with, we were staffing with caterers and these small venues or meeting planners. They weren't asking me for my exit strategy. But once we started getting bigger into the large venues and large sporting events and these long-term contracts, I call it the if I get hit by a bus clause, because
yes.
what they want to know is
Like,
if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, who's running this thing,
who's running
right?
this?
And so, it's valid. It's so valid.
It's
But
a
before
valid
that, I was
question.
like, listen, I am the business, and then I started realizing like they don't want to buy me. Right. They're
They don't.
buying the business. They're contracting with the business. And so
Exactly.
if they're contracting with me as an individual, I can't guarantee them anything, right? And so
Exactly.
they're contracting with a business. And so removing yourself from being the business is so important. And so that if I get hit by a bus clause.
I love that. I love that clause. I'm using it now, by the way. So I'm
Good.
taking that.
Go for it.
What it is,
I
it's like,
had
what happens when
yeah.
you get hit by a bus? What happens?
It's the if I get hit by a bus clause, and they want to
Mhm.
know like who takes over, what
Yes.
is your chain of command, what's your structure, what does your insurance policy say,
Mhm.
what do your
Mhm.
contracts say? And so I had to really kind of sit down with somebody and wrap my head around what all of this meant. And it was a little bit heartbreaking because, again, this is my baby, and every
Yes.
entrepreneur calls their business their baby. And so it's like it's almost like giving away your baby to, their new spouse or something. You're like, I don't want to
Let it go.
I don't want you to do that.
But Angela, did you find when you started asking those questions to yourself
Mm-hmm.
that you began to see yourself take yourself more seriously as a
Oh,
business?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, and it also allowed me to really see my business as a business, right?
Yes.
And so that's the other thing is that, in order for a business to be successful, it really needs to exist outside of you, right? Because
Exactly.
I, as one human, am limited to how many hours in a day, how
Yep.
much output I can put out, and listen, I work stupid amounts of hours. Like
Mhm.
I commit way too much to this business and don't have balance. But if somebody were to have balance in their life, like it would be
This
nice.
imaginary person.
I know. If somebody were to have balance in their life, I can imagine that, having a business that exists outside of themselves is important. And I actually just gave my son his first like business lesson the other day. And you will love this
I
because
love it. Tell me.
this is so in your wheelhouse, and you would have been sitting there like, yep, do that. So he is 16 years old, and he just started his very first real business, which was mobile car detailing, right?
Okay.
So he had a business when he was 13 painting mailboxes, but this is like the first real business. Like he printed off his own
Wow.
business cards and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was getting calls. He's putting things out on Instagram, and he's putting things out on Facebook, and he built a Facebook page, and he's starting to get calls. And now he's like, okay, well, mom, I have like 3 weeks worth of customers that I need to get to. And I'm like, well, why don't you try to knock out like 3 in a day instead of doing 2 in a day? Because if you can get that third one in, then you're getting because if they can't get this done soon, they're going to find somebody else. He's
Right.
like, yeah, but then I said, you need to hire somebody to help you. He said, if I hire them, then I got to pay them. And then, I don't make as much money. And then so I sat down with him and I showed him the graph of
Mhm.
if you have 2 employees and you can do this much volume, you're paying out this much, but you're making this much. And I showed him how exponentially he will make more money if he brings more people on because he can have higher
Yep.
volume business. And he's going to retain more clients because he can get to them quicker. And so anyway, he posted it on his wall and he has it in his bedroom. And so he's like, all right, I'm totally changing the way I'm doing business now.
Oh,
So
man, your son is lucky to have you. He's lucky to have you. You need to write a check for business strategy consultation.
he said, if I went to a business consultant, how much would this have cost me? And I'm like, honey, you're not even close to there yet.
Yeah. Well,
But
you would be
mhm.
surprised. The statistics, Angela, are
Mm,
huge.
mhm, mhm.
80% of small businesses are solo businesses. They do not
Really?
have employees. That's the stat for here in the
Interesting.
US.
Wow. And I
It
bet,
is stunning to me.
yeah. Well, and I bet in their mind, they're thinking they're making more money by not having employees.
They're
And
thinking what your son was thinking.
yeah. And, in his mind, he's like, well, I can charge this and I'll make this much and I'll do this and I'll do this. And I said, yeah, but if you look at the formula, honey, it doesn't work that way. And
Doesn't
this
work
is
that way.
why. And I said, you can afford to pay your employees X amount of dollars and you get this
Mhm.
much volume. And so if you just look at what taking yourself out of the business means, it
Mhm.
means growth. It
Yes.
means growth.
Yes. And the other thing too, Angela, is what I've noticed, another fear that business owners have
Uh-huh.
is that they are worried about meeting payroll. So
Yep.
there's exponential,
Mm-hmm.
issue, but they're
Mm-hmm.
also concerned that they are not going to be able to meet payroll.
Right.
And it's a scary feeling, I know. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, this is where you sort of go into the conversation around being able to manage risk.
Right. Absolutely.
Because if you plan to build a business that lasts and that you
Mm-hmm.
want to thrive, this goes back to the original
Mm-hmm.
conversation around what's the
Mm-hmm.
life plan and what's the business vision, what's the true north, what are you trying to get to.
Right.
So once you know what you're trying to get to, then you're going to have to do the things that make you uncomfortable,
Yes.
one of which
Mm-hmm.
is bringing on a staff.
Yeah.
And again, you can make that look however you'd like it to look, particularly now with so many things. The future of work is so different than how it was back in the day, where you kind of have people in the big building and the blah blah blah. You
Yeah.
can work remotely, so you don't have to have a huge building. To depends on what business you're in, of course. I mean, if you have a
Right.
factory, that's a different thing. But
Mm.
I was also noticing too. I was reading an article the other day that depending upon what industry you're in, some people are having a very difficult time even attracting employees. So like a lot of manufacturing companies, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sort of, they call them, the article, it was really a video article that was talking about like sort of men at work, sort of jobs where you kind of think of sort of your grandfather used to work, those kinds
Yeah.
of more blue collar, more physical types of jobs.
Right.
But those, they're having a very difficult time filling those types of positions.
Hmm.
And so in that industry, but then there's other industries where you have this whole companies are laying off, so you don't really know. But the point is, depending upon what industry you're in and how much it costs to have an employee, you really do need to think about, if you want to grow, if you have a strong vision for the company, one must really think about, when I saw the statistic, I mean, I knew that I was noticing a lot of companies where they're like, oh yeah, I have some employees, but I kind of contract this out, contract that out. But when you start looking, 80% of small businesses in the US
Mm.
don't have staff, then you really
Right.
begin to think, well, how are you getting to the goals that you're getting to? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important. And when you start looking at, and you're like, oh, well, that's okay, no problem. Well, with small businesses, over 90% of businesses in the country are small and medium-sized businesses.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, it's 99% of companies are small business. So this is not like, oh, they're small businesses, blah, blah, blah. They're sort of like, hobbies. No, it's a huge part of
Right.
our economic base.
Huge.
And
Yeah,
then, in the
absolutely.
US, we look at 2/3 of employees are hired
Mm-hmm.
by a small business. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a big, huge deal,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I'm so glad you had the conversation with your son,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a good foundational teaching that will take him through.
Right. And I think it's part of you can grow and scale a business, but you can't do it if you're doing everything. Like I'm really fortunate because, for a while, like I said, I was doing everything in my business and I thought I was doing it really, really well
Mm-hmm.
until I hired the team I have now. Like I have the best team I've ever had. And they handle so much more, so much better than I do,
I
right? Just
know, right?
putting somebody in that role, like my recruiter, my salesperson, like they're crushing it. And
Yes.
I was doing like a tenth of it and thought I was crushing it. And so it's amazing how much better things get. My
Yes.
office manager, I was it was taking me, and here we go with small businesses again, just
Mhm.
trying to do everything. It would sometimes take me 30 days to get an invoice out because I was trying to do so much. She has those things whipped out in no time. I mean, she's the reason we have cash flow, right? So, but it's those things. It's like I don't have to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning to get invoices done because I know
Right.
they're done and they're done right,
Yes,
because she's
yes,
not doing it in addition to the 43 other things that are on her plate, and
yes,
so
yes.
having people in those roles, man, and that hierarchy and that org chart you were talking about, that is gold. That is
It is
such gold.
golden. It is
Mhm.
golden. It is really golden. And then I think if this conversation could really just, tickle someone's ear out there who
Yeah.
is, who's running it, like, you have a good product,
Right.
you have a good service, that
Mhm.
you can, provide value to the world, then believe in yourself. Bet on
Yes.
you.
Bet on
Bet
you.
on you. Get
Mhm.
that team going. And look, I think was one of the I loved how you're like, well, yeah, you were like, the cook, the chef,
Yeah.
the bottle
Mhm.
washer. At
Mhm.
some point when you do that org chart, particularly if you're a solopreneur, um, you do that org chart, it's gonna have your name in there.
Right.
But the best strategy is to first start from the bottom of the
Mm.
org chart. And I say bottom, it's not like these are the less important jobs, but you sort of work yourself out of a job
Uh-huh.
at each rung of
Mhm.
the org chart, so that you're doing the work, what it takes to do that job. Yes.
Mhm.
You
Right.
know what the systems, the procedures, the operating procedures, everything that it takes. You create the job description based on what it is to be true. You
Mhm.
create the job commitment and
Right.
what needs to happen. You hire someone to replace yourself. You move to the next one,
Right.
and you just keep moving up, up, up. And the more, and it's funny, once you start hiring people, you realize, oh goodness gracious, why didn't I do this before? You start doing it faster. But
Mhm.
if you have someone that's sort of listening right now, and they're like, yeah, man, I'm having a hard time really feeling comfortable hiring, just take the risk of taking one role that you're currently doing in your business, create a job description for it, write down all of the processes that you have within that particular job description,
Mhm.
and then think about who you have to be when you're doing that particular job, so the kind of person you need to bring in to
Yep.
really fill that. I mean, if
Right.
it requires you to be more extroverted in that job or more organized in that job or whatever, then fill that role, move to the next. And
Right.
that will give you the process to be able to systematically fill your business with good quality, self-motivated people who believe in your business values, and it becomes beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a huge believer in building other leaders as well, because if you have somebody who can come in on one part of the job and then they just keep showing more and more dedication, just keep rising that person up through your organization, and you'll be
Yes,
amazed at how powerful that one position has turned into. And,
yes,
somebody who has enabled you to step away and do something working on your business instead of working in your business is a huge blessing. And so
yeah.
those people are the ones that you really got to pay attention to and say, okay, this person is taking enough off of me that I'm now finally able to work on my business. I'm working on strategy. I'm working on
Mhm.
development. I'm working on all those things that when you're working in your business, all you're doing is managing tasks, right?
Just
So,
managing tasks. That's all you're
mm,
doing. Yeah.
yeah.
And I love what you said, because I have a real philosophy, and I know that things are looking different as we move forward into what the future of work looks like. So
Right.
each generation wants to has a different way of how they look at work, and so I think we need to respect the changing shifts of tide. At the same
Yes.
time, I do think that there's human nature at play.
Mm-hmm.
Human nature. People want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves,
Absolutely.
period.
Yes.
And not
Mm-hmm.
everyone wants to start a business.
Right.
And so you think about who are the people, and as time goes on, it may be more difficult to find people
Mm-hmm.
who are self-motivated and who want to be a part of something bigger than themselves for a period of time. But trust me, there are. Don't let the news get you think, oh, everyone's out there quiet quitting. That is not true.
Nope.
You create a good culture in your organization. You treat people fairly, and you have a high standard where all of you agree these are the values of how we operate here in this company.
Right.
You would be surprised at how people will step up, and they will step up in a way that you don't, no matter how much you pay, like obviously paying people is very vital and important, but that's not the only motivating factor of getting people to want to do things that are way more beyond the scope. I was mentioning, as we were building the Martin Luther King Memorial, I had this funny story. We had gotten, I don't know if you remember, oh my gosh, this is the company's called, it wasn't Roadway, but there's two major trucking companies in the US. And there's Roadway and there's another. Anyway, the point is, the other one, I feel terrible now, but it's been 10 years. Give me a break.
Right.
I'm getting older. My memory's not that great.
I hear you.
One of the big trucking companies, they worldwide, I think it was, they I was able to get them to agree to wrap. We were doing this, great sort of promotional educational program called Kids for King. And it was a tool that we were, providing for schools to, to teachers to be able to use to teach kids about Dr. King, and also teaching them how to be charitable so they could, collect coins and do little bake sales and those kind of things to support the memorial.
Yeah.
So, so the company said, okay, we'll wrap, all of these trucks that, these trucks go around the country all around. So they wrapped all these trucks. I think it was like 20 trucks or something with the Kids for King stuff, and, like with the website and the whole thing. And it was a huge thing that I negotiated for over a year. I'm so excited about it. Yeah. So we were doing this whole press conference on the National Mall. And if you have some folks that are international audiences, the National Mall is where we have all of our memorials in Washington, D.C., and it's a National Park Service property. And, there's not many, there's some things you can't do on the National Mall. Right. So anyway, one of the things you can't do in the National Mall is having semi-trucks on the National Mall. Right. But we were able to get the National Park Police to agree to get this, to allow us to bring this truck on, because we were going to stage the truck, and then the CEO of the company was going to come and, do this whole, it's going to be a big deal, right? Yeah. We had the Department of the Secretary of Education was going to be there. It was kind of a big deal. Yeah. But what the Park Service said was, the Park Police said they had to be there. The truck had to be on site by like 5:30 a.m. or something like that. Okay. So because, rush hour begins and people are driving in from all parts. So, me and my colleagues, two of my colleagues, you know how we are women. We were looking cute. We had our outfits and stuff like that. And we're there at 4 a.m. because we're at their park 4 a.m. Of course, one, to make sure the truck was there, but two, to just kind of make sure everything else is going. Anyway, this truck, the driver, of course, if you've been to Washington, D.C., it's not very, the roads are difficult. It's not an easy, navigation.
Not for a truck. No, barely for a car. Yeah.
Yeah, really. So he is, saying, they're a little lost, and we're trying to tell him where to come, and there's a big thing, and eventually we see the semi like drive past us, like the entrance. And we knew had he kept going, there was no way that he was going to be able to be permitted to come back in. So here we are running in our cute outfits, the hair, the makeup, and we are just running at 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to get,
my gosh,
yelling overhead.
That's
waving
awesome.
our hands like crazy, trying to get this truck driver to see us so he could come in. Needless to say, he did see us, got back in, did a whole maneuvering, got back in, the whole thing went fine. All right, good. You don't have, unless you can't pay employees to do that. That's because they have a vision of the company. Yes. They are bought into it, and they believe that what they do is worthwhile to the movement of the organization. So, I don't know what, you know how we are. I was not about to ruin the shoes.
Right.
There's no
Mhm.
money that could have ruined the shoes
Right. Yeah.
or the hairdo, because I was
Mhm.
perspiring at that time because,
Mhm.
DC is,
Oh, yeah.
humid and all that kind of stuff. But the point is that you can develop a company that has strong culture,
Mhm.
strong standards, strong values, where you appreciate your employees, you pay them well, yes, but create a place where they're appreciated. They will be
Yes.
running at 4 a.m. in the morning trying to tail down
Mhm.
a semi truck because they believe in
Mhm.
what you're doing.
Right, right. And they're part of something bigger, they're
Part of
they're
something
part of
bigger.
something bigger, and
Yeah.
everybody wants to feel that. And I talk about this sometimes about legacy, like we all want to have a legacy that says I was part of something special, right?
Yes.
Not I was something special, because that's this ego, and that doesn't matter. You
Right.
know, after we go and we pass on, we want to know that our life was lived in a meaningful way that
Yes.
lives on beyond us, right?
Yes.
And so our legacy is what exists when you're gone.
Yes.
And that's what a company owner, it's
Yes.
what exists when you're gone.
What exists when you're gone? What exists?
Hmm.
You were talking about kind of like this idea of, entrepreneurs saying, "Oh, this is my baby, my baby." And yeah, I
Hmm.
understand it because I feel the same way too.
Yeah.
But I heard Jay Abraham say it a better way. He said, your business is kind of like a hedge fund
Yeah.
where you are the investor. You are the main investor in this hedge fund called
Hmm.
your business. And you have to make wise choices as to how you're investing in it and how you're structuring it. But if you invest well,
Hmm.
then this hedge fund outside of yourself, when you're gone, it's still there that people can reap the benefits from it. And they can, whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers, whether it's your family, the families of
Mm.
the employees, your investors, if you decide to sell a part of your companies. So the point here is it's an entity that's outside of yourself, but you're the primary caretaker of it.
Right, right.
And you're the primary investor of it. And if you do it well,
Hmm.
the legacy is beautiful. The
It
legacy is
really
beautiful.
is. Really is. Well, I love this. Gosh, so much valuable information. And I have a couple questions for you. I want to know you're so inspiring. I mean, obviously, like what you've done with the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial, and what you've done with your business to help inspire others on how to grow and how to, have a strategic vision. So who inspires you?
Well, I have a couple of people that inspire me, but today I'm going to say Martha Stewart. And I'm going
Yeah,
to tell
okay.
you, as a business owner, that woman is just something else.
Hmm.
It's actually between Martha and Oprah. I think they like the two of them together. I have like a picture that I found
Yes.
online years and years ago. I think it was on Pinterest. A picture of Martha and Oprah together. It's a black and white picture. Of course, it's not. There was color pictures when they were around, but
Uh-huh.
and I literally have it in my phone. But I'm going to say Martha today because this is a woman who has commercialized the art of what was considered just women's work.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's just women's work that was,
Right.
yet I honestly, as a young, I'm not age myself, but when Martha had her Martha's Living Show, I would watch that thing religiously because I
Mm.
would just loved all of the different tools she would use. And like she taught so many different things that you didn't really see out there
Yeah.
before. And
Hmm.
then, she had the whole, magazine. Then she had all of the stuff she had in Macy's.
Yep.
And then she had the little lip situation and, with the law. And
Uh-huh.
then to come back and
Hmm.
still move forward.
Hmm.
This woman I just saw on Instagram today,
Hmm.
she has a partnership with Amazon, Angela. They just launched
Wow.
it today. All her
Mm.
stuff is going to be on Amazon. I mean, she just doesn't stop.
Mm-mm.
She just
No.
doesn't stop. And I'm really impressed with it. And again, it's to the core, the core things of what she believed in. Her business is still the same core things from 20, 30 years ago, from,
Yeah.
but yet she's evolved with the times,
Hmm.
and yet she's been able to still maintain the brand in a way that I think is really great. And to think, she at the time um, when she was when they had the initial public offering, I mean, that
Yeah,
company was doing gangbusters
I
on
know.
women's work.
Yep, this is true. This is true.
So, today it's going to be Martha. Go ahead with
Yeah.
your bad self.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, good for her. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I'm so inspired by so many amazing women in business, and because
Yeah.
we do have different challenges. Our challenges are different than what
Yes.
men deal with, and we are held to a different standard.
Yes.
And that is something that, do you find that in your consulting? Do you find that women have a different standard?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I've had clients who are men and
Mm-hmm.
women who
Mm-hmm.
own, men who own businesses and women who, and I do see the differences. Obviously, coming up as an attorney in Washington, D.C., you can imagine,
Oh yeah.
there's some
Well,
situations that I've
there's a
been like,
few.
oh, okay. You kind of grow up and you think, because I've always believed in myself as a woman, and
Of course.
I've never really felt um, that I couldn't do anything different, whatever. But it wasn't until when you finally are out there, you're like, oh, so you are treated a little differently. You do
Yeah.
have to act a little different. You do have to show up differently as a woman. And
Mhm.
but now as I journey with women who are owning businesses and men who are owning, I begin to see within and how a part of it's how we're socialized, a part of it is how we just are, and a part of it is just kind of, the kinds of business and how you show up. Either way, there is a different way in which women do business. There are some things that I think that they can, um, that women can learn from how men do business. And I think there's some things that men can learn from
Mm.
women and how they do business. There's been, I think it was McKinsey who did a study that found that women led startups and businesses perform higher.
Right.
When you have companies that have more women-led companies, they perform higher in several different markers, including revenue.
Mhm.
But yet, only 4 out of 10 U.S. companies are owned by a woman.
Mhm.
And then you start looking at how women owned companies are treated when it comes to getting investments and financing.
Oh yeah,
It is completely different.
completely.
It is so, even the questions, I think it was WEBNC company, they did a sort of a study on the kinds of questions that
Mhm.
women founders receive from investors versus men. From women, it's always about risk. Can they
Yeah.
handle the risk? What are you going to do about risk? Versus, more like, how are you going to grow? How are you going to scale? Are those questions
Mm.
that are fielded towards men. So there's real differences there in
Right.
how the business owners are looked upon, and it's more difficult. You were talking about when you were trying to get funding for your
Mhm.
company, it's more likely that women will have to more bootstrap their company based on like
Yep.
family funding, their own funding, those kinds of things. It's very difficult to get funding. So you're looking at, and then you start looking at scale.
Mhm.
More, even though more women-led companies have, like, the stats are real that they have higher metrics, it is difficult to get the numbers of women-owned businesses that hit the million, right? I know that people feel like that million marker is sort of like an arbitrary number. It really isn't
It's not.
arbitrary. If you hit the million, it's likely that you will be able to then move on to the multiple seven figures and then continue. So when you start looking at the number of women-owned businesses that hit the million at top line revenue, those numbers are dismal. So
I think that the statistic, because I know the statistic, and I think it's somewhere around 2% of all businesses that make $1 million or more are owned by women.
yeah,
It's shocking. It's
it's
shocking.
shocking. It's
Mhm.
shocking. It's very shocking. And so, I really am I'm a big, huge proponent of, look, I call myself a small business champion, period. And, whether it's owned by a man or a woman, but
Sure.
as a woman, I think, and just basically when you start looking at it, we have to, we're losing all of this, half of this resource sort of lagging over here because we don't have structures in place to bring up more women-owned businesses. So my big thing is right now, we need to be investing in small and medium-sized businesses as a whole, particularly if
Right.
you're looking into, if particularly if we're talking about this being a recessionary year, we need to start creating structures and systems and infrastructure in place for small businesses to be able to thrive, period, done.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be looking specifically around how we can support women-owned businesses, because when they are leading and leading well and given the structures that are necessary, the systems and the support that is necessary, whether it's through investment financing, which is the biggest thing really for small businesses, right? It's all about cash, but
Right.
also be able to provide the kinds of tools that are necessary to
Mm-hmm.
be able to allow them to be able to uh, compete
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. Then we're doing something really great for our economies, and we're doing
Right.
something really great for our tax base. We're doing something
Absolutely.
great for an ability for employed to be employed. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things that we need to be able to do that we can't do if we're not supporting women-owned businesses.
Absolutely. And the diversity piece in general, excuse me, I'm coughing. The diversity piece in general, it leads to a more well-rounded organization that has a stronger foundation, that has more insight into what their customers actually need. When everybody on the board of directors of a company looks the same, that's not okay. You need to have diversity in the room so that you can get those points of view that you
Yeah,
just need in order to make a business really sustainable for the future.
I agree. I mean, Angela, you've seen those those ads that show up and you're like, was who was in the meeting? How did that
Hmm.
how did
Yeah.
that leave?
I know. Yes.
I sometimes watch and I'm like,
Hmm.
but who was at the table?
Right, right,
Yes,
right.
let's
Oh, there
push
were
that one out.
there were some Super Bowl commercials that came out just like that, and I was like, "Who said that was a good idea?" I'm like, I would love to know where that came from. But yes, I agree.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell me, okay, so as women, we often give our power away. This is something that we do, unfortunately, pretty frequently, whether it's taking criticism that we don't deserve or giving, credit to somebody who did not deserve it, but we will be the one to kind of shy away from that. We will let somebody take our power away. So tell me about a time that you gave your power away and then another time that you've stepped into your power.
Well, one time I do remember giving my power away. It was when I was in law school. I was
Mm,
in my last year, my third year of law school. You have sort of what we call sort of summer associates, and so you have an opportunity to work in a law firm,
okay.
and they kind of scope you out. At that time, I knew that I probably wasn't going to want to work for this law firm, but you want to do it because you don't want to give out opportunity. You want to scope all your opportunities.
Of course. Yeah.
But none the way, I was working in this law firm, and the partner who I was reporting to um, asked me to create to create a memo that was
Mm,
advising one of our clients, one of the firm's clients, on a particular point of law.
mm-hmm.
And as I researched that particular point of law, I found out that if that particular point of law was violated in some way, not only were there fines, but there could be possible criminal, um,
Wow.
you know, um, consequences, right? So
Mm-hmm.
in the memo, I drafted it, and you're kind of eager beaver when you're, in the
Right,
early
right.
days, and you want to impress as well. So I just sort of said, here's some of the ways that you could be exposed if that happened. And I
Mm-hmm.
sent it over to the partner. Of course, the partner, it's his in the end, it was going to be his memo because I was still an intern under him.
Right.
And he came down to me like hard, like, don't you ever tell a client that they could have criminal exposure. And this is like
Wow.
a major national law firm,
Wow.
very prestigious.
Mm,
And I was thinking to myself, really? And I took it like I knew in my own gut, based on what I knew as an attorney, because by that stage,
mm-hmm.
I had been in law school for a bit, and I'd worked with I'd had other internships, and I'd had other, so I knew that this is what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
because this partner, male, he's been in the business for a while, Washington, D.C., blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he came down so hard, I was like, I told myself that clearly that was the wrong thing to do. And I
Wow.
should not have, put in a memo that the client could possibly have criminal exposure. And I remember telling that to one of the senior associates who was a woman. And I said, yeah, this is what, the partner said. And it wasn't just that, he'd had some other critiques that were, about the memo and such. And he, was like, I'm going to have you redo this. And so I had to completely redo it. And I mean, this is like time consuming, a lot
Right,
of
of
research.
course.
And I was telling her, I'm like, yeah, this is how I messed up. And, and I was just sort of, taking all of this shame. And she looked at me and she says, first of all, this critique number one, that's stylistic. He may have a stylistic way of writing, and this is how you decided to write it, and that is perfectly fine. Critique number two, you are supposed to share if there is criminal exposure. He doesn't want to do that right now because he's fear he's going to scare the client away. Three, blah, blah, blah. And she went through the whole thing, and she's like, don't ever, if things like, yes, she's like, you are here to learn. At the same time, there are things that to be true. Trust that. And I really appreciated her being so forthcoming, because I was really ready to just kind of be like, yeah, I really clearly messed up. And, and look at me. And I just clearly I didn't learn anything.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was definitely one way that I felt like that I gave my power away. And if it wasn't for another woman who said, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Good for her. Good for her. Yes.
Good for her. Yeah.
Well,
and I would say, I guess I would say in terms of owning my power was really stepping into my business, and I mean, when I'd started my business, various iterations of it before I went full time into it. When I went full time in 2014, it was a scary thing, Angela. When you decide, okay, I'm not going to have any, cushion from, my job. But I'm going to believe in me. I'm going to bet on me. That was me owning my power. And what I don't want to have any of your audience to think that it's just been all, roses and, beautifulness and wonderfulness and easy. It's not easy. There are moments when I'm looking at the bank account, I'm thinking, really? Hey, so this looks interesting.
Right.
Moments when, the first time I got like a big, huge client and I didn't staff it enough well. So it kind of just really didn't go very well. And I had to have a come to Jesus conversation where I was the one being come to Jesus.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
There are lots of moments when building a business where there are ups and downs. So the reason why I'm saying this is because sometimes social media will get people thinking that everyone's out there just, balling, it's going straight line. But this is how it goes. It jaggers up, but it's always going up if you're doing what you need to do to build it.
Right.
So, but I think when I decided to walk full time into my business, without the crutch of my full-time job, that was really the moment where I felt like I was owning myself, owning my power, betting on me. And I want to really encourage other women who are listening to this. And I know you have male audiences too. And I know sometimes there are moments when you have to sort of bet on yourself as well as men. But for women, for some reason, we're socialized to not own our power in a really strange kind of way. So that was one of the moments when I did, and I felt good about it, and I don't regret it.
Well, good for you. I love that. Yeah, I agree. It's, stepping in and owning that power and trusting yourself. That's the hardest part, right? Trusting yourself to be able to do everything that you in your mind, you can do, but that courage, it takes courage every single day. And yeah, every single day it takes courage. So I have really, really enjoyed this conversation. You are such a blessing because you have given so much great information, but I have one more question for you. So what do you wish more people knew?
That they really have it within them.
Yeah.
Like they got it.
We
really are made of stardust. All of us. And so step into it leave all of the negative emotions behind, any of the jealousy, the fear, the worry, any of the things that pop up for you. Do the healing that you need to do for your childhood wounds and traumas. We all have them, just address them, heal them, and then move forward, because we all have it within us. We're all made of stardust. We can do amazing things. And honestly, this world needs more people doing what it is they're born to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much, Kerry-Ann. You have been such a pleasure to talk to. I've enjoyed every single minute of this.
What a joy to meet you and to have
Yes.
this conversation. Really.
Absolutely. Well, I am looking forward to hearing more and more about what you're doing, because I have no doubt that you're not stopping anytime soon. So keep going. I love this. So
to you as well.
Thank you so much for your time today. Again, you can find Kerry-Ann Powell on our website at prettypowerfulpodcast.com. You can check her out. Go check out her company, Trafalgar Strategies, and let her help you to create an amazing, sustainable, life-giving business. So thank you so much, Kerry-Ann. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time, and until then, step into your own power.